"You're finished here, Walsh." The words echoed across the boardroom as CEO Caleb Trent stood at the head of the mahogany table, his face twisted with barely controlled rage. 20 investors sat frozen in their leather chairs, watching me like I was some kind of spectacle. "My name is Megan Walsh. I'm 32 years old, and until 5 minutes ago, I was the senior financial analyst at Horizon Tech Solutions, a company I'd poured 6 years of my life into building. Effective immediately, you're demoted to junior analyst," Caleb continued, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Your incompetence has wasted everyone's time today." My incompetence, that's what he was calling it. What I'd actually done was refuse to sign off on quarterly reports that inflated our revenue by 18%. Numbers don't lie, but apparently I was supposed to. The investors shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances. They just heard Caleb present figures I knew were false, and now they were watching him punish the person who could have told them the truth. I gathered my papers with steady hands, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. As I walked toward the door, Caleb leaned close enough that only I could hear. "You'll regret this." The walk back to the floor felt endless. Every coworker I passed suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. Nobody made eye contact. I reached my old office, the corner space with the window view I'd earned through countless late nights and successful audits, only to find a stranger already unpacking boxes at my desk. "They said I could move in today," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "Sorry." My nameplate was already in the trash. A junior analyst desk waited for me near the copy room. The printer hummed constantly, and fluorescent lights flickered overhead. My new workspace was barely 4 feet wide. I was setting up my laptop when a hand dropped a yellow sticky note beside my keyboard. I looked up to see Marcus, a colleague from accounting, already walking away quickly. The note read, "Watch the expense accounts." My heart started pounding. This wasn't just about one falsified report. Something bigger was happening here. The break room felt like hostile territory now. I needed coffee, but the moment I walked in, 2 vice presidents went silent mid-conversation. "Megan," one of them said with a forced smile, "how are you settling in?" "Fine," I replied, pouring my coffee with hands that wanted to shake but wouldn't. The moment I turned away, I heard one whisper to the other. "Caleb wants her gone before next quarter." "The audit? We'll never find anything if we handle it right." I kept walking, but my mind was racing. There was an audit coming, and whatever Caleb was hiding, he was desperate to cover it up before then. Back at my cramped desk, I found an internal memo in my inbox. "Comprehensive financial audit scheduled for Q3. All departments must prepare documentation." That was 3 months away. 3 months for them to clean up whatever mess they'd made. 3 months for me to find out what they were hiding. I spent the next week going through old financial records, looking for the irregularities Marcus had hinted at. The expense accounts were a maze of complicated transactions, but something caught my eye. A payment to Summit Supplies, $47,000 for hardware components. Standard enough. Except 2 weeks later, there was another payment. Same amount, same vendor, same invoice number. We'd paid twice for the same shipment. I flagged it in an email to the accounting department, keeping my message professional and factual. No accusations, just a question about the duplicate payment. The response came within an hour. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll review it." The next morning, I tried to log into the financial database to follow up. Access denied. My permissions had been revoked overnight. 6 years of access, gone with no explanation. I sat staring at the error message, and that's when I understood. They weren't just hiding something, they were actively covering it up, and I was in their way. The elevator doors opened on the parking level, and Ronnie stepped in just as they were closing. He was a senior accountant, quiet, methodical, the kind of guy who noticed everything and said little. "You're not crazy," he said quietly, watching the floor numbers descend. I turned to look at him. "What?" The duplicate payments, the inflated revenues. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've seen it too, for months now. Why hasn't anyone said anything? Because people who speak up get demoted. He glanced at me meaningfully. Or worse. The elevator reached the lobby. Before the doors opened, he pressed a scrap of paper into my hand. Meet me tonight. The address is on there. I have something you need to see. The doors slid open, and he walked away without another word. I looked at the paper, an address in North District followed by 9 p.m., come alone. That evening, I drove to the address. It was a quiet coffee shop, the kind with dim lighting and private booths. I waited until 9:15, then 9:30. Ronnie never showed. The next morning, Ronnie's desk was empty, cleared out completely. When I asked around, people said he'd transferred to the Atlanta office. Nobody seemed to know when, or why, or even seemed to care. I checked the employee directory. Ronnie's badge access had been revoked at 11:47 p.m. the previous night, less than 3 hours after he was supposed to meet me. Something was very wrong. People don't just disappear like that, not without warning, not without saying goodbye to anyone. I pulled up the company transfer policy on the internal system. Standard procedure required 2 weeks' notice, exit interviews, and formal documentation. Ronnie's file showed none of that. Just a single line added yesterday. Transferred Atlanta branch. No paperwork, no approval signatures, nothing. Someone had made him disappear, and they'd done it fast. Megan, please have a seat. The HR director, Patricia Simmons, gestured to the chair across from her desk. Her smile was practiced and cold. We've noticed you've been asking questions about financial records outside your current responsibilities, she said, folding her hands. As a junior analyst, your focus should be on the tasks assigned to you. I was just trying to help, I said carefully. I noticed some irregularities. Those concerns have been addressed by the appropriate departments. Her tone left no room for discussion. Continuing to pursue matters outside your scope could be grounds for termination. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. They were threatening me. Crystal clear, I said. Walking back to my desk, I passed the executive conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see Caleb laughing with the CFO, Trevor Hughes. Their body language was relaxed, confident. I was almost past when I heard Caleb's voice, just loud enough. She'll be gone before the audit anyway. They both laughed. That evening, I went home and started making copies. Every document I still had access to, every email, every file I'd saved over the years. I uploaded them to a secure cloud account under a different name. If they were going to try to erase me, I was going to make sure the truth survived. Sleep wouldn't come. At 2 a.m., I gave up and drove back to the office to finish some reports I'd fallen behind on. The building was dark except for security lights and a few scattered offices where workaholics burned the midnight oil. I badged in, took the elevator up, and was walking toward my desk when I noticed something strange. Caleb's BMW was still in the executive parking area at 2 a.m. Curious, I moved to the window overlooking the lot. Caleb was standing beside his car, talking to someone, a man I didn't recognize at first. They were partially hidden in shadow. Then the man stepped into the light and my breath caught. It was Dennis Park, the owner of Summit Supplies, the vendor we double paid. Caleb handed him an envelope. Even from 5 floors up, I could tell it was thick. Dennis opened it, riffled through what looked like cash, then nodded and shook Caleb's hand. I pulled out my phone and took 3 quick photos through the window. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Caleb was paying someone off, and Summit Supplies was part of whatever scheme he was running. The email arrived from an unknown internal addressed the next afternoon. You were right. Check the travel reimbursements. A friend. I hesitated. Opening it could be a trap, but if someone inside was willing to risk helping me, I had to look. I used a coworker's login, someone who'd left their computer unlocked during lunch, and access the travel expense reports. What I found made my stomach turn. Caleb had filed for 12 international business trips in the past 6 months. Tokyo, London, Singapore, Dubai. Each trip showed expenses of $15,000 to $25,000, flights, hotels, meals, entertainment. The problem, I'd been at headquarters for half those dates. Caleb had been in the office. I'd seen him in meetings, in the cafeteria, at his desk. These trips never happened. He was billing the company for fake travel and pocketing the reimbursements. And if Caleb was doing it, how many others were? I traced the email header, trying to figure out who'd sent the tip. The originating account belonged to someone with high-level access, someone who'd been with the company for years. The name made my hands go cold. Ronnie Delgado. Ronnie had sent that email the day before he disappeared. I drove to Ronnie's apartment that evening. It was a modest building in the suburbs, the kind where neighbors actually know each other. I knocked, no answer. I tried again, nothing. "He's gone," a voice said behind me. An elderly woman was watering plants on the balcony next door. "Moved out 3 days ago, real sudden-like." Did he say where he was going? "Company transfer," he said. "Atlanta or somewhere." Seemed strange, though. He didn't even pack, just grabbed a suitcase and left. Moving company came the next day for the rest. My chest tightened. That wasn't a transfer. That was someone running or being forced to disappear. I thanked her and walked back to my car. Under the windshield wiper was a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. The message was printed in plain letters. "Stop digging." I looked around the parking lot. Empty cars, distant traffic sounds, no one watching that I could see. But someone had been here. Someone knew where I lived, what I drove, and what I was investigating. The threat was real. The annual Horizon Tech Charity Gala was the company's biggest event. Black ties, champagne, major investors, and enough corporate ego to fill the ballroom 3 times over. This year, I wasn't attending as a senior analyst. I was working it, serving drinks alongside catering staff, part of my new responsibilities. The humiliation was calculated. Caleb wanted everyone to see how far I'd fallen. I moved through the crowd in my server's uniform, invisible to the people I used to sit beside at these events. Caleb took the stage to give his keynote address about integrity in business and our commitment to transparency. The applause was thunderous. Investors ate it up. I was refilling champagne flutes near the side of the room when I noticed something. One of our largest investors, a silver-haired man named Vincent Morales, was showing Caleb something on his phone. Caleb's expression changed instantly. His smile froze. I moved closer, pretending to arrange glasses on a nearby tray. The phone screen was angled just enough that I could see it. It was an email chain, and my name was highlighted in the most recent message. Caleb whispered something to Vincent, then both men looked directly at me. My blood turned to ice. He knew. Caleb was monitoring my emails, maybe all my communications. Everything I'd been documenting, every question I'd asked, he'd been watching. The announcement came on Monday morning. Horizon Tech is pleased to welcome Veronica Tang as our new Director of Compliance, reporting directly to corporate headquarters. The news spread like wildfire. A compliance director from outside the company, from corporate, not hired by Caleb, meant someone higher up was paying attention. Veronica arrived that afternoon. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and a reputation for finding things people didn't want found. She walked past the cubicles with an assistant taking notes on everything she observed. When she passed my desk, she paused. "Megan Walsh." "Yes, ma'am. I'd like to meet with you later this week. Are you available Thursday at 2? "Of course." She moved on, but I felt the shift in the room. Caleb had been untouchable. Now there was someone in the building he couldn't control. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Late Wednesday night, I was searching through old archived files on a shared drive most people had forgotten existed. It dated back 3 years, to when our previous CFO ran the department. Inside, I found quarterly financial statements, the originals before any revisions. I compared them to the current versions on file. The differences were staggering. Revenue had been inflated consistently for over a year, sometimes by as much as 20%. Expenses were hidden or moved to different categories. It was systematic fraud. I started downloading everything to my secure backup. Halfway through, my screen went black. Access terminated by system administrator. I tried to log back in. Nothing. The entire shared drive had been wiped, deleted remotely while I was looking at it. Someone was watching, and they just erased the evidence I needed. But they were too late. I'd already downloaded half the files. The most important ones, the ones showing the pattern of fraud, were safely stored in my cloud account. The stairwell was cold and empty. I was taking the stairs to avoid the crowded elevator when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, deliberate. Megan. I turned. Caleb stood 2 flights above me, hands in his pockets blocking the exit. "You've been busy," he said, his voice echoing off concrete walls. "Asking questions, making copies, digging through files you shouldn't have access to." "I'm just doing my job." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Your job is whatever I say it is, and right now you're a liability." He started walking down toward me, each step slow and measured. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're not. You're just a person who doesn't know when to quit." He stopped 1 step above me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "You don't understand what you're messing with." I met his eyes. "If you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried." His jaw clenched, then he smiled, cold and calculated. "We'll see about that." He walked past me and disappeared down the stairs. I stood there, heart pounding, until I heard the door slam below. "Megan, we need your laptop." Patricia from HR stood at my desk with a security officer. Around us, coworkers pretended not to watch. "Company property needs to be inventoried," she said. "We're also requiring you to sign this form acknowledging unauthorized access to restricted files." I never accessed anything unauthorized. "Our system logs say otherwise. Your laptop, please." I had no choice. I handed it over, watching them seal it in an evidence bag like I was some kind of criminal. They thought they'd won. They thought taking my laptop meant taking my evidence. They didn't know about the USB drive I'd hidden at home, a drive from my first job filled with backups of everything I'd found, or the cloud account under a different name, or the printed copies in my storage unit. I'd learned from watching Ronnie disappear. I wasn't going to be erased that easily. That evening, I went to my storage unit to check on the printed files. Everything was still there, untouched. But when I got home and checked my bag, my stomach dropped. The USB drive was gone. Someone had taken it, stolen it right out of my bag. My hands shook as I searched every pocket, every compartment. It was definitely gone. They were always 1 step ahead, but they'd missed the cloud backup, and that was all I needed. My closest work friend, Tina, stopped by my desk during lunch. She looked exhausted, her eyes red like she'd been crying. "I'm putting in my notice today," she said quietly. "I can't do this anymore. The lying, the fear, watching what happened to you." She trailed off, then pushed a folded paper toward me. "Check your pay stub, line 23. Before I could ask what she meant, she walked away quickly, not looking back. I logged into the payroll system and pulled up my most recent pay stub. Line 23 showed a deduction I'd never seen before. Expense recovery, $4,200. I clicked on it for details. According to the system, I'd been reimbursed for a business trip to Seattle last month, a trip I never took. Now they were recovering that fraudulent reimbursement from my paycheck. They were framing me, creating a paper trail that made it look like I was the one stealing. If an audit came, the evidence would point to me, not Caleb. This wasn't just about getting rid of me anymore. They were setting me up to take the fall for everything. The all-hands meeting was called for Friday afternoon. Everyone crammed into the main conference area, whispering nervously. Caleb stood at the front, flanked by Trevor and Patricia. "It's come to our attention that there have been accounting irregularities in our financial department," he began, his voice grave and authoritative. "We take these matters seriously. An internal investigation is underway." He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Every person in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. "Until this investigation concludes, certain personnel will be under review for possible disciplinary action." The room felt like it was closing in. I was about to be fired for crimes Caleb himself had committed. My career would be destroyed. My reputation ruined. Then Veronica Tang stepped forward from the back of the room. "Actually, all disciplinary actions are suspended pending the external audit," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Corporate has moved up the audit timeline. The team will arrive Monday." The color drained from Caleb's face. Monday, that was 4 days away. He'd run out of time. The weekend was chaos. I heard through text messages from coworkers that it was working overtime, updating systems and archiving old files. Translation: they were wiping drives and destroying evidence. Sunday night, I got a text from an unknown number. "They're wiping drives tonight. Last chance." I didn't know who sent it, but I knew what I had to do. I drove to the office at midnight. The building was dark except for the IT floor, where I could see lights on and people moving around. I badged in, praying my access still worked. It did. I took the elevator to the records archive, a dusty room filled with physical backups that it hadn't gotten to yet. Using my phone's flashlight, I photographed box after box of financial documents, invoices, and ledgers. The original paper trail, they couldn't erase digitally. 3 hours later, I had everything uploaded to my secure cloud account. My phone storage was completely full, but it was worth it. I was legally protected under the company's whistleblower policy. These were corporate records, and I had a right to preserve them if I suspected fraud. When I left at 3 a.m., I felt like I could finally breathe. Monday morning arrived like a storm. The audit team set up in the main conference room, 4 people with laptops, file boxes, and an air of absolute authority. Caleb tried to control the narrative, presenting sanitized reports and polished summaries. He was smooth, confident, answering their initial questions with practiced ease. Then one of the auditors, a woman named Michelle Torres, asked a simple question. "Mr. Trent, why were last quarter's revenue revisions signed by Ronnie Delgado, an employee who left the company 2 months ago?" Caleb froze. I'm not sure, perhaps an administrative error." "These revisions were made last week." The room went silent. Caleb's confident expression cracked. "That's impossible." "The metadata doesn't lie, Mr. Trent." Michelle looked at him evenly. "Someone used Mr. Delgado's credentials after he left the company. That's a serious compliance violation." Trevor tried to intervene, offering explanations about system glitches and shared passwords. But the auditors weren't interested in excuses. They wanted answers, and Caleb didn't have any that made sense. That night my phone rang, blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" "Megan, it's Ronnie." I nearly dropped the phone. "Ronnie, where are you? What happened?" "I didn't transfer," he said, his voice strained and tired. "They paid me to disappear, gave me 6 months' salary and a non-disclosure agreement, said if I stayed quiet, nothing would happen to my family." "Oh my God, Ronnie." "Listen to me. They're going to destroy you to save themselves. But I kept copies of everything, messages, files, recordings, things they don't know exist." My heart was pounding. "What kind of recordings?" "Everything. Caleb ordering falsified reports, Trevor discussing fake expenses, their whole operation." He paused. "I sent you an encrypted file. Password is your employee number plus your hire year." "Ronnie, thank you. Are you safe?" "I'm far enough away, just finish this for both of us." The line went dead. I checked my email with shaking hands. There it was, a large encrypted file, sent from a temporary account that would probably be deleted within hours. I entered the password, my employee number plus 2019. The file opened. Inside were screenshots of Slack messages between Caleb and Trevor discussing falsified reports, fake expense claims, and payoffs to vendors. There were emails with subject lines like quarterly adjustments and investor presentation numbers. But the most damaging evidence was a series of voice recordings. I clicked on the first one. Caleb's voice came through clearly. "If Walsh won't lie for us, we'll find someone who will. She's been here too long anyway. Time to bring in fresh blood who understands how things work." Another recording, dated 3 weeks ago. "The audit's coming. We need to clean everything up and make sure any problems point back to her. She's already been flagged for unauthorized access. It'll be an easy sell." There were 12 recordings in total, each one more damaging than the last. This was it, the smoking gun that would end everything. I spent the rest of the night organizing everything into a clear timeline with supporting documentation for each claim. By dawn, I had a complete case file ready to present. 21. Tuesday morning, I received a formal summons from corporate headquarters. The parent company's board wanted to meet with me, alone. I walked into that conference room with a folder containing printed copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered. The board members sat in silence as I laid out the timeline. The falsified reports, the duplicate payments, the fake travel expenses, the forged signatures. I showed them the photographs of Caleb meeting Dennis Park in the parking lot at 2 a.m. I played portions of the recordings. I showed them the paper trail that proved systematic fraud going back over a year. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, the board chair, an older woman named Diane Fletcher, spoke. "Ms. Walsh, you have no idea how long we've been waiting for someone with the courage to come forward." "You knew?" I asked, surprised. "We suspected. Caleb's numbers were always just a little too perfect, but without concrete proof, our hands were tied. You've given us everything we need." Wednesday afternoon, the audit team requested a meeting with Caleb in the executive conference room. Through the glass walls, the entire office watched. Michelle Torres laid out document after document. Caleb tried to deflect, to blame accounting errors and system glitches. His voice got louder, more defensive. Then he tried to pin it on me. "Megan Walsh has been accessing files without authorization, making accusations. She's been unstable ever since her demotion. This is clearly a vendetta." "Ms. Walsh brought these discrepancies to our attention," Michelle interrupted calmly. "Her documentation has been thorough, accurate, and properly sourced. In fact, she's the reason we were able to verify the fraud." Caleb's face went white. "Fraud, that's not. You falsified quarterly reports to inflate revenue. You filed false expense claims totaling over $180,000. You used company funds for personal gain and attempted to frame an employee for your crimes. Yes, Mr. Trent, fraud." Security appeared at the door. Caleb stood, his hands shaking. "You can't do this. I built this company. You can't." "We already have, Mr. Trent." The office fell completely silent as Caleb was escorted out, Trevor right behind him. Some people looked shocked. Others looked relieved. A few were crying. That evening, the news broke. Horizon Tech CEO and CFO under investigation for financial fraud. My phone exploded with messages from coworkers, former colleagues, even people I'd gone to college with. Everyone wanted to know what happened, if I was okay, what I was going to do next. I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet of my apartment, processing everything. It was over. The lying, the threats, the fear, the sleepless nights, it was all over. I'd won, not because I was smarter or stronger, but because I'd refused to compromise the one thing that mattered, the truth. The next morning, Patricia from HR called me. Her voice was different now, respectful, almost apologetic. "The board would like to see you, this afternoon if possible." I arrived expecting another round of questions. Instead, I found Diane Fletcher waiting alone in a private conference room. Ms. Walsh, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for your integrity. What you did took extraordinary courage. I just did what was right, I said simply. That's exactly why we're offering you a new position. Diane slid a folder across the table. Inside was a job offer, Senior Financial Ethics Officer. You'll oversee all financial reporting, implement new compliance protocols, and ensure this never happens again, she explained. You'll report directly to the board with full authority to investigate any concerns. The position comes with a significant salary increase and a seat in executive meetings. I stared at the paper, barely processing the numbers. This was more than just getting my old job back. This was real power to make change. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Diane said with a small smile. You've earned this, Megan. More importantly, you're the right person for it. You proved that you can't be bought, intimidated, or silenced. That's exactly what this company needs. I thought about everything I'd been through, the humiliation of being demoted, the threats, the fear, the nights I couldn't sleep wondering if I'd lose everything. But I also thought about Ronnie, forced to disappear to protect his family. About Tina, who quit because she couldn't stand the corruption. About all the other employees who'd suspected something was wrong but were too afraid to speak up. Someone needed to make sure they could work without fear. Someone needed to rebuild trust. Yes, I said, I'll do it. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, the same boardroom where Caleb had humiliated me. The view was exactly the same, but everything else had changed. Horizon Tech had rebuilt its reputation slowly, honestly. The new CEO was transparent and ethical. Employees no longer whispered in fear or avoided eye contact in hallways. And I had created a financial oversight system that made fraud nearly impossible. Anonymous reporting systems, regular audits, transparent accounting, protection for whistleblowers. A young intern knocked on my open door. Her name was Keisha, fresh out of college and eager to learn. Ms. Walsh, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you get here? Everyone says you went up against the CEO and won, that you saved the company. I smiled. I didn't go against him, and I didn't save the company. I just refused to lie. She looked at me thoughtfully. Was it scary? Terrifying, I admitted, but doing the wrong thing would have been scarier. That afternoon, a letter arrived at my desk. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note. Megan, thank you for having the courage I didn't. I'm doing well now, working for a good company in a different state. My family is safe. We sleep better at night knowing people like you exist. They called your name for the audit because you were never the problem. You were the proof. You were the person honest enough to tell the truth when it mattered most. Keep fighting. Ronnie. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, next to the yellow sticky note that started everything. Watch the expense accounts. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the city. The printer hummed in the distance. Phones rang. People moved through the halls with purpose and confidence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Not because I'd won some battle or gotten revenge, but because I'd stayed true to myself when it would have been easier to look away. That, I realized, was the real victory.